What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Haze Demon Show. And today we are going to be showcasing that tier list for adventure theme. This is going to be our second tier list that we have done. We did one last week, which was on the neutral tier list. If you want to check out that video, the link will be in the description down below or at the end of the video. You know how it is. And next week we will do mystical as a follow-up. Then we will do sci-fi and fantasy. We'll go through every one of the themes one by one and break them down the best that we can to give you guys a good idea of what cards you may want to level up or not, or pick in Team Wars, etc. I've been playing the game in Legendary for over a year, so my opinion of the cards is a little bit different because every bracket, being wood, bronze, silver, gold, has, or even mid-tier gold and high-tier gold, have all different kinds of metas. But we're just going to be going over cards and how useful they can be for the cost that they are in the theme itself, and how many counters each card has, and not necessarily not necessarily how much a card is supported. The more that a card needs to be supported, the lower they go on the list. So if a card can carry the game by itself, the higher it will go on the list here in the tier list. So without further ado, let's go ahead and go over the adventure theme. So for our first card here, we have, it's gonna be Arrow Storm, and we have that card in the B category. This card is a 4-cost spell card. It is able to dish out damage across the entire field. There is no real counterplay to this card other than knowing your opponent has it and not overextending and using too many assassins at one time. So once you know they are using it, you just have to be mindful of what they have on the field. But this card is effective at killing so many units and then just dishing out some extra damage to anybody else, like like Annuit Kinney or Cyborg Kinney, should we say, or any of the swarm units, chickens, all of those. This card is going to be able to take them out, and it maybe you weaken some back row in one way or another, and then this card can clean them up because you might not be able to hit them with another card. So it does find its benefit in a lot of different ways. It does fall a little short in challenge mode, but it can still be effective regardless. It goes into the B category. Up next is going to be Bendita Celie, which we have in the C- category. She is a common assassin, 2-cost drop, and she's really not too bad. It's just that she has no ability. She has a slightly longer attack range. I guess it's because she has scissors, so she may be able to get an advantage on some people, but the ones that have a long advantage usually have a lot more oomph to them. Canadian Ike and things like that. This card is not too bad though. It scales okay for the 2-cost, and it does its job as an assassin, being able to, you know, dish out the damage. So she doesn't really get too much of a negative for her value for her cost. So she ends up in the C category. Up next is going to be the Barrel Dougy, which gets a whopping B rank. This card is absolutely redonkulous, as it is an assassin 4-cost headhunter that does extra damage the first time it hits the enemy new kid. So that's like its war cry, basically. So this card ends up so high on the list because it is able to do, because this card is able to do things that other headhunters or just assassins in general cannot do. It can close the gap from the midline to the new kid within seconds, and able to pop off so much damage that you can take a bar and instantly win a game. And the thing that is so critical in this game is energy. And do you know how you get energy? You get energy by time. Over time you gain energy, and thus if your opponent doesn't have any energy, there is no time to make up the difference here. There is a ton of counters to this card though. You know, a rogue token, fireball, lightning bolt. If the card is a low enough level, Aerostorm can do a job. Labar Jimmy also can. There is a lot of counters to this card, so that's why it doesn't end up higher on the list, but it is very powerful if used correctly and doesn't actually require any support from any other cards. All it matters is knowing when to use the card, right? And using it cost efficiently at the right time, even though so it doesn't go higher on the list because it does have a ton of counters, but if used correctly, it is absolutely crazy. So let's go ahead and continue on before I keep talking about Barrel Dougy, which I do not play Barrel Dougy. I mean, I do not play Dougies in general, but they are still very good. We've got next Buccaneer Bebe. She is going to be in the D category. She ends up a little bit higher than I was thinking she was going to be at first, and the reason why is she is a 4-cost ranged unit, and her ability is when Buccaneer Bebe kills an enemy unit, increase her attack by 6. And so what it is that if she is ignored, which is possible that can happen, she alone can gain attack and become a target worth lightning bolting, fireballing, throwing AoE at her, anything like that. So she can turn into a bait card herself, but it requires some dedication to this card, and so she ends up lower on the list overall, but higher on the list because she has the potential to become a critical target, but she requires more support to get there. She requires help and defense to keep that, to allow her to gain, and also her opponent to play in her favor, you know what I mean? So she requires a little bit of lack of skill on the other side of the field. So next we have Calamity Heidi here. She is going to be our C- card. She is a 2-drop common card with no ability. But she is both smart and funny, mind you. But she has no ability. She would end up a little bit higher on the list if she did have an ability. However, her scaling was nerfed during the big Great War of Legends and Commons. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, you know how it is. But she actually is really good for a 2-cost beefy unit. That's why she doesn't end up anywhere lower on the list, just because she's a fighter with no ability. But the 2-cost body that she is able to put on the field, she can defend from assassins at a critical moment, or just plain out stall out for some time if need be. Getting in card cycling to be able to rotate through different cards. So she has a place. She just can't get herself higher on the list because her scaling in the late game doesn't work out as much in favor for her. She still is a really reliable card though, no doubt about it. Up next is going to be Captain Wendy. We got her in the C+ category. She has a potential to be able to carry a game. She is a ranged 3-cost unit with a charged ability, shoots the 3 closest units. Now, they don't have to be in front of her. They can be 1 unit to her right, 1 unit to her left, 1 unit above her, and she's going to hit all 3 of them. And it is a very good amount of damage. That's what ends up putting her a little higher on the list. Plus, being the 3-cost allows you to not overcommit energy to a card that doesn't necessarily have the health or the attack to be able to really dish out damage. But she does have the potential with her ability and being a rare, she has a little bit better scaling and stats overall, is what puts her into the C+ category. Pretty good card. She doesn't, like I said, she doesn't rely on any other card to be able to use her ability. She's able to just blast off, and you can even hit the new kid with her ability, so that helps out a lot, tremendously. Putting that as one of the 3 targets that she can target. So next we have Deckhand Butters, who ends up in the D category. He is a 3-cost assassin with the Death Wish. Heals his closest ally or leader. He is not a bad card, so he doesn't fall as low as you would think he might. He has the potential to be able to heal your units and keep a strong target alive longer. The health really isn't that much whenever you look in the late game scaling, but as you're playing lower meta, middle meta, maybe he can benefit. Maybe a headhunter, or even just a beefy unit. He can keep him alive, but he does have a really fast attack for all of the assassins, but his 3-cost is what really sets him back from being a stronger choice overall. Just the 3-cost, that's it, because anything else, he's worthy of being a good 2-cost drop assassin, but that 1 extra energy just bumps him down lower on the list. It is possible to miss your heal also, but if you learn how to play him good, then that's not really an issue. But Sally ends up coming up a little bit higher than him, just because she has the 2-cost, which your main thing for an assassin is that they can spawn on the field and do damage, and if they can do the damage without costing the extra energy, that's what can allow them to be higher on the list, and why he is lower than Sally. I'm trying to put him a little bit more moved. Alright, so on to the next card. It is going to be Fireball. This card is our first A-class card. It is an absolutely outstanding spell card. 5-cost energy, damages enemies in an area. It has a pretty big AoE area, and you can use it on your opponent's side of the field to absolutely demolish your opponent's defense, or even whenever they go to attack you directly, you can, when they group up their units, they are going to absolutely regret it, because this card is bumping. But the thing is that it does have an issue with not scaling into the late game. If cards start to get really tanky, then Fireball cannot necessarily do the damage. It does find its place in being very powerful, and you can weaken, units down and then Fireball them. But it can absolutely win games, especially in challenge mode. The scaling works well in that mode, but when you start to get into the ladder, and then the legendaries and epics start to get a lot more beefier, it starts to lose its bang until you get to that 6. But that is absolutely a lot of cards to get to. I commend any of that dedication to that for sure. But this card ends up in the A category because you can gain an energy advantage that is absolutely impossible for your opponent to come back from, because they can build up 3 possible units that are 4 energy, 3 to 4 energy or more, which means they have 10 plus energy stacked on the field, and boom, just 1 5 energy blast can demolish it, right? It doesn't matter where it is on the field, right? So on to the next card is going to be Gunslinger Kyle, which finds himself in the E category below Buccaneer Bebe and Captain Wendy in the ranged units. He is a ranged 3-cost common card with a charged ability that Kyle's allies and leader get plus 30 for 3 seconds. Don't remember that the boosts that these cards get are not they're not scaled. This is level 1, so you would know it's higher. But the thing is that this card, even though it's a 3-cost range, which means that the ranged is worth it, because it's not a 4-cost is what I mean to say, because there is some 4-cost issues. Anyway, the ability is really good from Gunslinger Kyle, but it requires you to have multiple units set up on the field, and if you do not have any other units to follow up or support this card because he's supporting them, then he does not have any ability at all. He can beef up your new kid with his power, but the timing is also not very long. It's like, yeah, for 3 seconds. It says it right there. That does not change no matter what level it is. Maybe if the timer was doubled, like 6 seconds, this card could get bumped up 1 or even 2 tiers. But because that timer is so low, the benefit is really low. He has a low attack range and he has a low attack. He has low stats. He scales bad for the common category, so he ends up a lot lower on the list here, not being as effective as he could be. Never going to be a lightning bolt target of any sort. So we are going to move on to the next card. It is going to be Hookhand Clyde. He gets into the B category as an epic fighter with a war cry. Damage a random enemy. If anybody has ever heard this, and if you have not heard this, you have not played this game enough. This guy right here is called Hook Hand Clutch because he is at a make it or break it, win a game out of absolutely nothing. And this card can be devastating to your opponents, but the fact of the matter is it's random. Now that random can also still come into favor in that it can hit the new kid, and if you just need that little bit of extra damage to win the game, your opponent might not have a unit on the field. It's a 100% chance it's going to hit that new kid and you're going to win the game. Or that they're going to put a unit out onto the field and it's going to get murdered, because this card kills units that are worth higher value than he could ever be as a fighter without his parrot, right? The parrot makes it or breaks it. Yes, it is a gamble. Some people will eventually get fed up with it and never want to play him again because their parrot always misses. But then there's somebody else playing this card because every game they play, it always hits the other person's Mecha Timmy or their Stand Mini Moons or their Witch Doctor token. It hits every specific key target no matter what. And that's the thing, is it's all about luck. But it comes down to, he has that luck factor in him, but in the end, he's still dishing out damage to your opponent no matter what, if he hits the wrong unit or not. And he has a solid body for being a fighter. His scaling works into the late game of Phone Destroyer. So our next card is going to be our first S-Class. He is Incan Craig. Ladies and gentlemen, this card has made a huge comeback. Before, back in the day, he probably would have ended up in the E or the D category only maybe 2 months ago. But this card has made a huge comeback in the meta, and because he got buffs. He got a big buff to his AoE width and to the damage that he does to units on the field. He is a 5-cost ranged unit with a war cry, shoots his laser beam towards enemy leader, damaging all the enemies in the way. So not only does he do direct damage to the new kid, which was nerfed, but no big deal, he is able to get a huge amount of energy value by demolishing multiple units in a row, very similar to Fireball, except that for the same cost you can get the same amount of damage as Fireball, theoretically, but you also get a body that they buffed up his attack to a pretty decent amount, not OP damage, but his health is where he becomes more of an OP card, as he has gained the traits of Medusa Bebe. He actually is a tanky ranged unit. He's not just a ranged unit that can be taken down in 2 shots by an assassin, even an epic assassin, right? He will sit on the field and he will take those hits and allow you to get time to build up another unit to protect him of anything. So he not only does he have the health, the damage, he also has the unpredictability, because you can play him anywhere on the field, sort of, because you still want to try to line him up to hit all the units. But he has the potential to be laid in multiple areas and be less predictable than Satan or a rogue token. So his value can be almost guaranteed as soon as he hits the field, and then after that is all up to the user. So and he requires no support whatsoever, putting him in the S category, when before, like I said, he would have ended up in the D, E, at most maybe the C minus category, right? But right now, tier 1, tier S card for sure. Up next we have Annuit Kinney, who falls into that other category of being a D tier card. He is a 4-cost assassin, legendary. His death wish kills the enemy that killed him. It sounds so good, and it has so much possibility to be able to be a super counter card. And he has a lot of health, and he has a lot of attack because he's a legendary assassin, so he can easily out 1v1 other assassins. And in the right situation, he can dish out his damage and do DPS that would be impossible for any other assassins. But his problem comes in that he has a humongous amount of counters. And the problem also is that even if you try to play him perfectly, your opponent has the time, the energy, advantage, chance to counter you easily with one 2-cost drop assassin like a Sally, or even the Deckhand Butters can come in and one-shot him or whatever. They might not be able to 1v1 him, but if they catch him off guard, then he 100% is going to not be worth his, his energy. He has a really high chance to get killed even by the New Kid Zap, and Medusa Bebe can counter it by nullifying his death wish, making it unable to even do anything. So there's so many counters to the card, even Arrow Storm, Fireball, any AoE damage that cannot directly target him or something of the sort. He has too many counters. If he was a 3-cost, he would instantly be bumped up like 2 tiers, if not 3 tiers, because of the value of the energy wise. But at 4-cost, the energy and the risk put him a lot lower on the list, you know what I mean? So making Sally even a better choice as an assassin when you're looking at the raw class and what you're going to get the value out, because again, the main value of an assassin comes from dishing out damage and not necessarily having to take hits, right? And Annuit Kinney, your opponent is guaranteed going to try to take him down with Lightning Bolt or anything. There's so many easy even a Unholy Combustion or Transmogrification with a -1 energy trade is worth it on Annuit Kinney. So yeah, even going negative against him is a value efficient way for your opponent to play against him. We have Lightning Bolt up next. It is going to be in the S category, yet again our second S class. This is a spell, 4-cost, does huge damage to one enemy, and it does 10% of whatever damage to the enemy new kid. This card has no counter to it, obviously, because it instantly hits the field and there's no body, right? And it is able to kill so many back row cards. It is able to kill a card that is trying to block the new kid in those last critical moments. It can hit the new kid directly to dish out the final blow. It has so much flexibility. Even if you're playing against somebody a higher card levels than you can have one of your units hitting them and then come in with the lightning bolt after. This card has just tremendous value for being right on 4 energy and having just enough damage. Even in the late game where legendaries are supreme, when legendaries are duking it out between each other, this card's value can come in handy instantly. like I was saying. So, all around, this card has so much potential and is able to do it, because there is no counter. I mean, Youth Pastor Craig, yes, one card counters every spell card in the game, but that is not what we mean here. And obviously the card is no good whatsoever versus tanked units. Guaranteed you get the value from the card when it instantly kill cards, of course. But like I said, S+ card, no matter what, this card flexes. It flexes hard for the... I can't get it up there in the spot. Yeah, that card does everything it needs to do, and more. Up next, we have Medicine Woman Sharon. She is in the C- category. Before the big update for the Adventure Clan, she would have been multiple tiers lower, if not at the bottom F tier. We have a 4-cost ranged unit with a charged ability. Heals herself and all nearby allies, including the leader. This card has a decent amount of health and a decent amount of attack for a rare ranged unit, but her big thing is that even if she can't heal another unit, even one other unit, she can heal herself, which there's very few cards that can do that. And she can heal the new kid, which is a huge counter to any chip decks, or just in general able to keep you going longer, right? But if she gets caught in the right situations, she has the potential to boost up so many other units. I mean, Gunslinger Kyle has that same ability to potentially boost up other units, but her healing factor can win you battles over a battle of attrition. You know what I'm saying? Her charge time is quick, her heal is pretty good, and her ranged is better. She has a longer range. So yet again, she would have been a lot farther down a couple months ago like Ink and Craig, but the new recent buffs to her put her into the C- category. She has good potential, but she can definitely carry herself. She doesn't need to be supported. Up next, we have Outlaw Tweek, which is going to be in the D category. This card is a 4-cost ranged unit, very similar to Hookhand Clyde's Warcry, throws dynamite, and it can also hit the enemy new kid. I don't know if it's 10% of the damage. It might be, it might not be. I'm not for sure. The problem with this card is it is a common card, so his stats don't necessarily scale as good. If he was a 3-cost, this card would be bumped up a lot higher on the list. But being a 4-cost, the fact of the matter is you're throwing out your ability, and then you don't necessarily have the stats on the field to accommodate for the 4-cost. Your ability can be very good if you are lucky. If your opponent is bunching units together, then you have a higher chance of hitting them. But if you hit the new kid directly, you're not really going to do a lot of damage. It still does an okay amount of damage for chipping, but it's not really worth it, and not where that the energy value does not come in there. It can come in clutch, but this card is not called Outlaw Tweek Clutch, or, you know, like Hookhand. It is a fun card to play, but it's risky. The opponent's units can be spread, and the AoE will not be good enough if it doesn't hit multiple units. So he goes into the D category. But the stats are, because like I said, he's a common, right? So, on to the next, we got Pirate Ship Timmy, which is in the C+ category, right along with Captain Wendy. He is a ranged 3-cost rare with a charged ability, launches cannonballs at the enemy. See, as this card has a really long range attack, and he has an even longer range ability, making him be able to do his job on his own. I mean, one of his problems, of course, is that he does move faster than all the other Timmys. He moves faster than Captain Wendy. But during the fight, he can do decent damage, and his Cannonball is really good for the distance and can catch your opponent off guard by hitting the new kid directly from behind the midline, I do believe it is. So for 3 cost, he can do his job very well. Not necessarily going to scale into the late game as good. Maybe Captain Wendy can just barely scale into the late game better than him, but his cannonball is really good. The range of his attack and his ability is really good for his cost. Up next we have Pocahontas Randy, who also got recent buffs and is in the A tier. He is a 5 cost fighter, epic fighter with a charged ability, calls an Indian. It says call and Indian. I don't think I ever noticed that, but calls an Indian kid to battle. So all the Randys are actually generally really good, but this card wasn't very good before the recent buffs that were to Ink and Craig and Medicine Woman Sharon. Now this card has the health and the damage that can equal to a legendary card, 6th Element Randy. If you have this card 1 higher level than your opponent's 6th Element Randy, you are going to win the battle. The 5 cost means that he is worth allowing your opponent to transmogrify Unholy Combust him. He has the potential to pump units out, to block attacks, to stall out the fight, to be able to be healed, and all those that kind of thing. His attack is very fast. That's why he's able to beat his counterpart that's a legendary, because he can out DPS. If you're in the middle of fighting and Pocahontas Randy's hitting, you don't even want to use his charged ability because he's attacking so fast that the DPS is you have to have it. You know what I'm saying? The new kid Indian is to stall timeout and to be able to get zappers and things of that nature. But the spawn time for the Indian kid is kind of slow. You gotta go oh. So it's a little bit slower than his potential his counterparts. So, but he makes up for it in that he can attack really fast. Also, he spawns fighters, so they don't really have a lot of damage either. They're just a little bit more tankier. But this card does very good. It can carry games by itself. It does not need any support whatsoever, and is worth being Unholy Combusted, etc. for the 5 cost, since it makes an even trade. The next card we have is Shaman Token, and he is going to be in the F category. This card is a common 3 cost fighter with a charged ability, remove all negative effects from allies. If you have this card at level 1, it will actually tell you that you have no ability whatsoever. You have to level him up to level 3 unless they've changed it since the last time I looked at it, which I know it doesn't say that right now, but it used to be like that, and it could still be like that. So it's really weird that he starts out with no ability. It doesn't make any sense, or maybe it was just a thing that they were thinking about doing. But anyway, his ability is that he can cure all status ailments on your side. The problem is that the only thing in the game that is what he can cure is poison, freeze, but he might be frozen himself in that situation. There's very few times where he would not be frozen if other units are frozen. I mean, it depends, right? He cannot counter mind control. When a unit is mind controlled, they turn onto the opponent's team, and thus they are unaffected by his ability because it says from allies. If it said remove negative effects from every unit on the field, then he would become maybe a little bit more viable. Not even negative effects. How about just remove all effects on the field? So, like if they have a Master Ninja buff, if everybody on the opponent's side has plus 100 attack, he can remove all of that. This would make this card much more viable. But because he can only heal his teammates, this card has no stats. I mean, his stats are really low. He doesn't scale into the late game, and he has nothing that he can actually counter. So he ends up all the way at the bottom. It might as well be that he has no ability and he has no body. Up next is going to be the next F category card. It is one of the most brand new cards. A ranged epic 3-cost with a charged ability, knockback, and damage the nearest enemy in front of her. Lots of problems with this card. The ability does not synergize with her whatsoever. The knockback effect does not do enough damage. If it actually just, instead of just knockbacking, if it just did damage and allowed her to retarget onto whatever's closest unit to her, then it would make her a lot better, but then she'd be like some of the other cards. It wouldn't have her special ability, right? But her range is short, her health is low, her attack is low, her knockback is low, and every time, or like 50% of the time that I tried to use her ability, it wouldn't let me use it. So I'm locked onto a unit further away, and then I've got an assassin or I've got a fighter right in front of me, and I'm trying to use the ability to push him away, and for some reason it just stays focused on one other character. So if she can't actually defend herself with her ability like she's supposed to, at least like consistently, then the card goes further and further down, further and further and further down into the F category. She requires everything in the book to try to keep her alive, and her value, even at 3 cost, is not worth it. The next card that we have is going to be Sheriff Cartman in the E category. He potentially could be bumped up into the D category, but I find that he still just doesn't really scale into the late game, and his ability isn't as good as it should be. He is a fighter, he is a tank, 4-cost rare unit with a charged ability, damage nearby enemies with his bullet tantrum. In the beginning of the game, he seems very good because his ability is pretty strong right off the bat against low-level characters. But as you get in further, his ability really can only kill rats or pigeons. It can hit the new kid, but that's if he can get to him. It's not. He doesn't have a lot of health, and he has almost no attack. Because he's definitely a tank here. He does have one of the fastest attacks in the game overall. Almost no units. He may be the only unit that has the fastest attack in the game, but it's really, really low attack, and his ability is low, and he doesn't really scale very well, especially for the 4 cost. He is an okay card for the start and using as a tank unit until you can find something else to fill in his spot. But for the 4 energy, if he was a 3 energy, he would be a lot better. But for the 4 energy, he is not worth the value. So on to the next card. It is going to be Smuggler Ike. He manages to snag a C+ spot above Sally. He is a 2-cost assassin common card with a charged ability, increases his attack power. I think he might have a faster attack speed than Sally, but Sally has the little bit longer range, so she would be able to hit him first. But Smuggler Ike, because he has the faster attack overall, means that he has more DPS for the 2 cost. Of course, he's just a common, so he doesn't scale very good. Otherwise, he would maybe make it a little bit higher, like 1 tier higher on the list. But for the 2-drop and the fact that he can hit the field and do his damage, the ability isn't necessarily as important. But if you can get it off, more power to you. It can kind of stall it out a little bit. He's able to do what he needs to do on the field, and there's not necessarily, a counter. You're not going to do anything crazy to defeat him other than dropping another assassin unit on the field. So he is good. He finds himself to be the best assassin besides Barrel Dougy on the adventure theme in the C+ category. So you can definitely run him. It just doesn't really work as well into the late game because he's a common card. We all know about how scaling works out. But he does the job that he needs to do, and he's only a 2 cost with an extra ability that's not... There's no gamble to it, you know what I mean? Up next we're going to have is Stan of Many Moons. This is a legendary 4-cost fighter with a charged ability, casts a fiery blast at all enemies. This card hits the A category and not the S category because he has way too many counters. There is way too many counters, and he doesn't have a tanky amount of health compared to some other units of the 4-cost legendary status. However, this card ends up in the A category because it has the potential to still demolish your opponent and at almost every rank except for right at the top of the tier, of legendary, except people are now running Ink and Craig, so Stan of Many Moons still finds his place. It's just that there is a lot of potential for tank units, for removal, tank units to be able to take the hits, removal cards to be worth the value, the Lightning Bolt, the Fireball, Unholy Combustion, Cock Magic, and cards like Powerbind and Enforcer Jimmy, or cards like Mind Control or Cyborg Kinney. There is so many cards that can counter this card or kill him fast enough that he is unable to get his ability off. So he does not belong in the S category because he has the risk. But he has the power. He has the power for sure, 100%, to blow up the whole field of majority of units in the game. It is if the card is unchecked, this card can win games guaranteed. So he ends up in the A category for sure, for sure, for sure. And up next is going to be Storyteller Jimmy, who finds himself in the C+ category. This card is a epic fighter for 3 cost with an aura. Decrease the attack of all nearby units. This card is got a good stats for its health. It does okay on the damage. It's not supposed to be a damage dealing unit necessarily, as more of a stalling supportive character, very similar to Towley, but not as effective in that slowing down is a much stronger ailment. But the negative attack can stop swarm units from being able to do hardly anything at all, and he has really good scaling since he's an epic card. There's not a whole lot that people are going to be able to do to counter this card. The thing is that he just doesn't have enough attack to really carry. In the health, his attack and health is fine for what he does. Like I said, he's more of a support card and finds himself in the C+ category. So next we're gonna have is Swordsman Garrison, which we have in the B category. This card is a 5-cost rare fighter with a charged ability, slash and damage enemies in a frontal area. This card would have been in the A category, but his ability can be a little bit iffy in that when he goes to turn to fight somebody, it can instantly be a 90-degree angle turn, and you can miss the opponents that you actually wanted to hit with him. But this card is very good in that it's worth the 5-cost energy for somebody else to even use their Unholy Combustion, etc. to damage him. His AoE is really good damage and can hit the new kid through units. So you can hit a pretty good amount of value off of him. He also walks slower, so you can kind of set up behind him like a tank. He has good health. He has okay attack. He has a pretty good attack, really. He's not like huge. He's not a tank. I mean, he's a fighter, right? But he has a good amount of health. So he can do very good on the battlefield for sure. But he does have a pretty good amount of counters, of course. So always keep in mind that we're not comparing these cards to other tiers. To other themes. So don't compare my neutral theme tier list to why did I put these cards in this tier list. Each theme has its own tiers because they're being compared to each other and their value in the overall game and their consistency to be able to do what they are supposed to do, what their value, their energy that you put into them to make them cost effective, and the outplay value that you can get from a card. And that is going to be it, everybody. That is the tier list. And these are just my opinions, guys, but I hope you guys enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to leave a like and a subscribe and a comment down below. Don't forget to join the Discord if you have not also. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Don't forget to bring a towel. Peace out.
You wanna know how I got these scars?
Shut up, Mimsy!